The Atari 8-bit computer plug-and-play, the 400 Mini, was released about 4 months ago, and the first official updated firmware for the system has just dropped on the Retro Games support page. I'll show you how to update your 400 Mini and what improvements this new software delivers right after this.
This video brought to you in part by Tommy and the Order of Cosmic Champions. This exciting and heartwarming coming-of-age Gen X novel is available now. Check the link for more info.
Hey there, welcome back to GenXGrownUp. I'm John, and I am a Gen X grown-up. In my original review of the 400 Mini, I called out a small handful of problems that were holding the system back. The most problematic was the failure to properly recognize and respond to analog controls for the Atari 5200 titles. In checking the release notes, it appears that this has been addressed along with several other fixes and improvements, but let's not just read about it, let's try it out for ourselves. First, we need to grab the new firmware, so head over to the Retro Games support page to download the 1.0.1 RUP file. I'll toss a link to that page in this video's description. Then just copy that file right into the root, not in a folder, of a USB memory stick formatted using FAT32 with an MBR. If you've already played with expanding your 400 Mini, you can toss this on the same stick you're using for additional programs.
Now before you upgrade, if you'd like to verify what firmware you're currently on, you want to drop down here into Advanced Options, System Information, and you can see here we're on the 400 1.0.0. We're going to upgrade to 1.0.1. So you're going to take that USB stick that has the RUP file on it and plug that into the back of the 400 Mini. Now it's recommended to limit peripherals you have plugged in at this point. Make sure you only have the power, HDMI, and a single CX stick plugged in, and then power the system back on. Now, nothing's going to look different at first, but we're going to go right back into the menu and go to that same Advanced Options, System Information, and this time it will see that RUP file that's sitting on the USB stick and asks, do you want to upgrade to 1.0.1? And we do, so we go over to Update and hit the fire button. We're back up, and to make sure that the process was completed successfully, we're going to go back into System Information, and we are in fact now running 1.0.1. First things first, we'll talk about the games. There has been one new game added. We now have Caverns of Mars added. Now you probably know Caverns of Mars got that recharge treatment earlier in the year. Maybe that was last year. I never played the original though. It's effectively a vertical scramble or Super Cobra. A nice little addition to the stock games, and one you get for free just for updating to the latest firmware. Now the issue with M.U.L.E was already widely known. There was even a patch for it on the website a couple weeks after release, but it was a bad disk image. It had corrupt graphics, and in fact, if you caught the wumpus, it would crash the whole game. 1.0.1 now has the updated image for M.U.L.E. Now, if you have any saved games, they won't work. They mentioned that on the update, but you can play M.U.L.E now properly, and it's not going to run into any problems for you. Now, unfortunately, in updating the disk images for the games, they didn't address 7 Cities of Gold, so you're still missing out on what was an amazing animation of a hand with a quill drawing out the 7 Cities of Gold logo. It's just a smaller disk image. Was it a size limitation? I don't know, but that wasn't changed. This game isn't broken, it's just missing some of the bells and whistles that you would have seen when you booted it up. Now, they also mentioned in the release notes a patch to Missile Command. Apparently, there was a problem where if you resumed a saved state, it would reset on you, therefore, invalidating that save state. It didn't help. I never experienced that myself, but I guess enough people did that they found it and they fixed it. So just another little fix. These next few things aren't so much fixes as they are improvements or correcting omissions. The first is when you're configuring a disc or cassette to run from the USB stick, and you go into those configuration options, you can now adjust the display height much further than you used to. It used to go from 192 to 212. And so now that display height can go, way past 212. Much higher, up to 239, almost 240 lines. So you can make that a lot taller than you would before. So if you're having trouble with disk images you were playing getting cropped off at the top and the bottom on the display, not a problem any longer there. And the others have to do with the keyboard mapping. So let's jump into 400 Basic here. Now you'll probably remember that Option, Select, Start, and Break were mapped here to these function keys F5 through F8, but we were missing some keys and some arrows as well. So first and foremost, you have the Help key. So anything that needs the Help key, F9 is now Help. Also, I noted in my review that we did not have access to the Atari key, the inverse video key. That's F10 now, so you can tap that, and that's now available. You don't have to go into that side menu over here to get to that any longer. Also, the brackets, which were not available through a keyboard, look, they are now available. And as if that weren't enough, they have mapped the arrow keys properly. So they were just being ignored before. So now the arrow keys are here. Now, if you use an Atari, a real Atari, you know that arrow keys used to only work if you held down Control. Well, they've just reversed the behavior. So if you don't hold down Control, you get arrows. And that's great for when you're programming or navigating on screen. If you hold down Control, they will have the alternate functions of those special characters that used to only could access by modifying the arrow keys. So that's now there. So expansions to the keyboard, I'm going to have to update my stickers on this keyboard with my set of stickers because they've given me more functions that were missing in the initial firmware. Oh, and two more buttons I almost forgot, two more keys. F11 is a warm reset, and F12 is a cold reset, which basically is a full power off and back on. Those are functions that exist inside of an emulator. If you use an Atari emulator, you should be familiar with those, and they map those right on the keys here for you, so you don't have to bail out and come back in. And one last item that's in the update list that I won't demonstrate here, but if you want to use cassette images in a playlist, that's a little bit of an advanced feature, that's now supported as well. Now next I'm going to dig into what was probably the biggest problem with the 400 Mini at launch, and that was how it handled controls for the 5200 emulation. You'll remember the manual said plug in an analog stick, you'll get analog control, but we saw in the review it was digital. So I'm going to plug in my 8-bit do controller again with analog sticks, and we're going to see if it is as improved as the release notes claim.
This will only take a few seconds, but I do want to let you know about our store over at GenXGrownUp.com/merch, where you can find hats, shirts, stickers, and more, printed with some of the coolest original artwork spanning gaming, sports, media, and pop culture. Every purchase gets you something cool and supports the next video like this one. So please keep us in mind the next time you're in the market. Okay, back to that new firmware.
Okay, let's check that 5200 analog stick behavior. I'm going to do the same thing I did in my initial review. I've got missile command for the 5200 loaded up. For settings, I have the same settings, 15 flat and 75, to see how things behave. So let's jump in. Okay, so if I use the D-pad, it behaves the same as it did. Yeah, and then oh, it's definitely behaving differently. I'm going to have to adjust these settings because now, yeah, it is using the analog. Okay, all right, let's go do some fine tuning. Let's come down here to the analog speed and let's, I don't know, let's bring it down maybe? Let's bring it all the way down. Auto center, we do want it to do a little, I think. Okay, yeah, let's try that. Oh, that thing is cooking. And it's definitely, more tuning is required, but it is blasting across there. All right, more tuning. All right, the speed is as high as it gets. Sensitivity, maybe need to up the sensitivity. I don't know. Let's see. Let's bring down auto center just for, just to try it. Okay, it's still super fast, but even with auto center off, you know, maybe the auto center doesn't apply here because your stick automatically auto centers. That would make sense. Okay, more fine tuning. All right, now what I've done is I brought all of these down to 0. I'm starting to think that these settings are really just interpretation for digital to analog. Because you have a true analog, I'm not seeing a great deal of behavior change. It's going to be down to what your analog stick does. But it's definitely being recognized as an analog stick now. The one I have is moving really quickly, and I don't think you can adjust that, but there's no question that this is analog control. In fact, to continue, I mean, it's really fast. Like, I could use some slowdown, really. To continue to test this, let me jump into my test program that I also use during the review. So I've got that Pete's test cartridge here, and I'm going to set the analog speed to, where did I have it before? I had it to 15 flat and 75. So just to repeat my settings from before. All right, that was in the review. That's what I had. All right, now let's see how the sticks behave. So the D-pad, yeah, okay, and then the analog stick, yeah, definitely behaving differently as an analog. That recenter is fast, like you can see. Let me dial it down just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to try 40, medium, and 25, just to give you an idea of what the differences are. I'm going to say this is going to be up to personal taste. Now that you have proper analog control, you have to play with those settings for them to behave the way you want. And you can see how it speeds up and how the auto centering. I have a very slow auto center. Yeah, you can see that. And I can change direction midway there. Yeah. Now, one game that didn't make my review at all was 5200 Pac-Man, because with the lack of analog controls, it was almost unplayable. And it's better now, but still we need some tweaking. Like the folks at Retro Games, they need to try to play these games and see what doesn't work to give us the tuning we need. So let me show you what I mean. So let's go ahead and fire this up. You have to hold in a direction for a second before it changes direction. Right. Now you saw that. Now I'm going to hit up. See, it takes a second. Down, left, miss that turn there, down. You do it ahead of time. I'm just missing these turns. You can see that. And it all has to do with the time it takes for the analog control to be interpreted as having moved that direction far enough from dead center, because games like Pac-Man, they wouldn't read it as a move. It would just move a little bit. It had to move a lot. And for reference, I have it set to like full, as fast as things can do. Center as fast as possible, move quickly, analog speed is really, really fast. Just some games aren't yet working the way you want them to. Certainly an improvement. No doubt this is an improvement. Analog control is being recognized. Retro Games, you need a little more fine-tuning to get it right for 5200 games. So the 1.0.1 firmware, first of all, a dream to install. Thank you for that, Retro Games. No more jumping through hoops like we have with other devices. Is it perfect yet? No. Everything is improved a bit. Is there room for improvement still? Absolutely. I think it's safe to say at this point, if you have the 400 Mini, you can safely install the 1.01 firmware and you will have at least as good or better an experience than you did under the 1.0.0 stock firmware that came shipping from the factory.
Considering this new 1.01 firmware is almost entirely comprised of fixing bugs and correcting oversights in the initial software, I'm a little bit surprised it wasn't released sooner. After waiting so long, I was kind of expecting some new quality of life features like the ones I mentioned in my firmware wish list video some months back. But I'm not complaining. This release certainly improves the 400 Mini and corrects a great many of the problems we experienced at launch. And Retro Games just published their roadmap for the next year or so, and it includes a full-size console launch in Q4. Might that be a full-size Atari plug-and-play like the 800 or 800 XL? And if so, we might see some of those usability improvements integrated there. Well, only time will tell, and I'll keep an eye on it, of course. In the meantime, links to other 400 Mini coverage here and here. I certainly hope you found something to enjoy in this video, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.